Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time that you're watching this video, or simply good hello. This is going to be hopefully a quick, short video to introduce you to the expectations and explain to you what you need to do for our functional behavior assessment and FBA video project. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up, first of all, from our PowerPoint that we went over on our first night of class. So when we talked about our major assignments from the first night of class, I gave you a little bit of information about each one. So this is kind of our culminating assignment. It's our signature assessment for our course, and it is the Functional Behavior Assessment and Behavior Intervention Plan project. For this project, you'll be completing an FBA, or Functional Behavior Assessment, a Behavior Intervention Plan, or BIP, and then you'll be presenting it in a video. So in order to complete this assignment, you would start off by speaking with the teacher, unless you're the teacher of record in the classroom, then you could do this with one of your own kiddos in your class. But otherwise, you would speak with a teacher regarding the behavior of a student in their classroom. First, let me go ahead and say that this is a pseudo, what I call a pseudo FBA and BIP. In the real world, an FBA and BIP, first of all, is an individually administered assessment. When you do a full-blown FBA, it's an individually administered assessment. What I mean by that is, like, say, for example, your state testing. When you do state testing, you don't have to get parent permission before you can test a student for the state testing, because all of the students get that. But not all of your students have an FBA, a functional behavior assessment. So because it's only for those students who need it, that's why it's considered an individually administered assessment. So if we were doing a full actual FBA, you would need to have parent permission. Because we are doing as I call pseudo FBA, and we're doing it for our learning purposes, you're not going to give me the individual child's full real name. You're either going to give me just the first name or just the last name or initials or something of that nature. And we're not going to be administering all of the processes of it. We're not going to seek parent permission, because there's no way for me to identify who you're talking to or talking about. And like I said, we're not doing all of the steps. So in a real FBA, you would, like I said, first of all, get parent information. You would also have a parent interview process where you get information from the parent about the child and about the concerns and the child's history. You would be able to check screening records. You would be able to check behavior reports from years and years and years, anything that's in the CUME folder, anything that's in the child special education folder. You'd be able to look at academic progress. You'd be able to get parent permission to talk to any outside therapists or doctors, find out if there's medication issues, if there's been a change in medication, if the child's on medication. You'd also rule out things such as vision and hearing. Perhaps the child's misbehaving in class because he can't hear the teacher anyway, and so he's misbehaving. Perhaps the child can't see the board, and so when the teacher's sitting, thinking that the child's sitting in class just ignoring and refusing to remain on task, it might be because they're having issues such as being able to hear the board, being able to see, or that there's other medical issues or situations going on. So in a full-blown FBA, functional behavior assessment, there's things that are ruled out first, such as medication issues. And then, like I said, whether or not there's vision or other physical issues, if there's a learning disability that has not yet been diagnosed, and perhaps the child's misbehaving in class because he's unable to do what he's being asked to do. So there's things that you would rule out in a real world situation. But like I said, where this is a learning situation and we're doing a pseudo FBA, we're not going to be getting the parent interview. We're not going to be interviewing the child individually ourselves either. We're not going to be administering any behavior rating scales. We're not reviewing the child's historical information, historical data, testing records. We're not talking to any doctors, therapists, counselors of anything of that nature. So you're saying, so then what is the point of this assignment? The point of the assignment is to give you at least a glimpse into and a little bit of familiarity with working with what goes into an FBA, what kind of things are on those forms, and those type of things. That's what you will be looking at. That's what we will be doing. So that's why I said it's a pseudo FBA, and that's why we're not seeking parent permission, because we're not doing the full process. And like I said, you're not going to give me any identifiable information where I would be able to tell who the child was. Like I said, you're going to use a first name only or a last name only or initials or even a pseudonym, an assumed name. So, like I said, not parent permission, and we're not interviewing the parent and we're not interviewing the student. You will speak to the teacher and find out about the behavior issues that the child has been having, what has worked, what has not worked, what they've tried, whether or not there's a pattern to the behavior, if they notice what usually triggers the behavior, what's going on, who the child's usually with, all of that information that you can get from just talking with that teacher. Once you've done that, then you would make arrangements to come in and observe the child, much like you did on your data collection project. So you would observe this child one time. And that's another thing. In the real world, we would never, or at least should never, base an FBA off of one observation. As I've mentioned in class before, any one of us can have an abnormally good day. Any one of us can have an abnormally bad day. So we would not want to base our functional behavior assessment off of one observation. We would need to know what's typical for that individual. And you cannot determine typical with only one observation. You're probably saying, so then why are we doing it one observation for this assignment? Because we're in an 8-week class. And like I said, this is just for learning purposes. Also, in the real world, you should never be writing an FBA in isolation by yourself. Like I said, ours is a pseudo and it's for learning purposes. This should be a team process where you're meeting, like I said, with the parent, with the student, getting input from the student's teachers, current and previous if possible, and getting ability to be able to sit with other individuals such as a behavior consultant, with the gen ed teachers, with maybe the administration and what have you. So as an IEP team and going over what we need to do for the child. So like I said, for our pseudo FBA, so for our learning purposes, you will speak with the teacher, get their input, as much information as you can get from them. Then you will make arrangements to observe the child at least for 45 minutes to an hour, collect your information just like you did for the data collection project. Use that information from your observation, and the information provided by the classroom teacher, along what you've learned in this class and from your text and your professional judgment, to develop an FBA, functional behavior assessment, and a behavior intervention plan. The two go together. So the information in your FBA, a lot of it is repeated in the BIP. A lot of that information then is repeated. You might wonder why. Typically, when we're giving other teachers that are working with the students, so say, for example, if Charlie Brown's in high school and he has 7 different teachers, we usually do not give them the entire functional behavior assessment. What we give them is the behavior intervention plan, the BIP, that they need to follow and implement in their classroom. So we give them the plan, not necessarily the assessment. And so that's why a lot of the information that's in the assessment is repeated in the plan. So the FBA must include the type or types, if you collected more than one type, of data that you collected, at least one graph depicting the data. The behavior intervention plan must include, like I said, the information from the FBA and a plan for intervention, what you would propose. There's a template, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. Then you're going to create a video, and you're going to present your information. You might be saying, but why? Well, typically, like I said, this is done as an IEP team, and it's a process. So you would have gotten parent permission in the real world, parent permission to do an FBA. Then you have to share the results of that assessment. Just like if you were to give a child an achievement test or an IQ test, or when you're doing a reevaluation and additional testing is requested, you've got to come back together and discuss that assessment information. So what you're going to do for me is, as if you were presenting it in an IEP, you're going to present it to me. And just like I've got my video here where you can see me and you can see my information here on the screen, that's what I want to be able to see. So I want to be able to see you as you present, just like you did for your week 1 discussion board where you introduce yourself. I want to be able to see you. And in that discussion board, you displayed your template, and that was intentional. So that way you'd get that practice before you had to do this for your major assignment. And then I want to be able to see your information. So this information was available for you, and it's still available for you. This came from our PowerPoint slide that was presented on our first night of class together in this that said major assignments. So that is available for you in the week 1 folder, as well as available for you under the tab that says Start Here. So this is where this information comes from. So it says to refer to the numbered and highlighted templates and the video presentation rubric. So we're going to look at those now. So if I go to the rubric or the template, and you'll find these in the folder over here that says functional behavior assessment. When you go to that folder, in that folder, you're going to see a folder that says FBA, BIP, forms from Kentucky. These are the forms you should use. So those are going to be blank. Obviously, they won't be highlighted and numbered. Why are these highlighted and numbered? Because there's some areas that you can skip. Like I said, it's a pseudo FBA. You're not going to have all of this information. So you're going to provide for me anywhere where you see on this, and this is available for you in the rubrics folder as well as in the FBA folder. So anywhere that you see a highlight and you see it numbered, that's what you need to provide for me. If you're not sure, and it says student's full name, but I already told you you're not going to give me their full name. So you're not going to tell me Charlie Brown. You're going to either tell me Charlie, or you're going to tell me Brown, or you're going to tell me CB or C Brown, or whatever the case might be, but don't give me the child's full name. And where it says school, that can be fictitious. It does not have to be actual. Because like I said, I don't want there to be any identifiable information. So if you want to list a school, that's fine. If you want to give me a fictitious school, that's fine as well. But do not give me the school and the child's full name together, both of those items together. Person developing the FBA, of course, will be you. The grade, what grade is the child in? So that part's very straightforward. The information you see here in section A, these are the things that you're going to ask the teacher about. You're going to ask the teacher when you meet with them prior to doing the FBA. What does the student like to do or enjoy? You're going to ask this information about the student's learning preferences, about where and when and with whom is he typically successful, who's important in the child's life, in and out of school. Has anything happened at home that could impact it? So has there been any sudden changes? Father's been deployed, there's been a death in the family, anything of that nature. What consequences, positive or negative? So in other words, what type of reinforcers have worked for the child? What type of consequences, negative consequences, have worked for the child? What tangible rewards have been effectively used and worked for the child in the past? So for that's 12 things that you would have filled in. We go on to the next one, and yes, again, it says full name. Don't give me full name. Again, just the initials. You're giving me the information, the same thing from the first page there. What does the target behavior of concern look like? So you're going to describe for me. Remember, we talked about the behavior needs to be observable and measurable. Don't just tell me Charlie Brown has an attitude problem. I need you to describe for me what that behavior looks like. So under this section here, where it says indirect assessment, typically, we would be looking at things such as the behavior screening tools, questionnaires, interviews. So you can mark interview and you can put teacher, or you can put other and you can say interviewed teacher or spoke with teacher, information gathered from current teacher. Where it says direct assessment and it gives you ABC analysis, scatter plot, other observation data. That's what you would check is the other observation data because you're collecting data by observing the student. And then where it says archival records review, again, in the real world, you would be able to look at all of those different things. For our purposes, I would mark other and say information gathered from previous teacher. Again, the student's name, not full name, but the student's name. If you notice here, it says skip this section. So like I said, there's sections on here that will note for you. Now, on the pages that you're filling out, obviously it won't say that. So that's why you refer to the ones that I provided for you that are numbered and highlighted for the sections that you need to complete and the sections that you're able to skip. Next, we go on to section C. When and where does the target behavior occur? Most often. When and where does the target behavior of concern rarely or never occur? So in other words, this behavior usually occurs when the child is called upon to read out loud in class. The behavior rarely or never occurs when the child is getting to do activities of their choice, free choice activities. And what types of activities does the target behavior of concern most often occur? And what types of activities does the target behavior of concern rarely or never occur? So we're looking at, and you're saying, well, that's the same thing. Well, no, one was saying when and where. Another one's saying what types of activities. So in other words, is it when they're working independently? Is it when they're working with someone else? Is it when they have little supervision, when they have more supervision? So that's what we're talking about there, and what types of activities. Whether or not it's independent work, whether or not it's academic, whether or not it's all the time. So in other words, we're looking at under what circumstances there. Again, student's name, not full name. And you see there, you're skipping that section 5, 6, and 7, you're skipping. So in this next section, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's duration, that's latency, that's frequency. You're only going to fill in information for the type of behavior that you collect. If you collect duration in behavior or duration information, data collection for this individual, you're going to put it in that section. If not, you're going to leave that one blank if you're collecting latency. So in other words, like we did for the data collection project, you're collecting the type of information that is most appropriate for that type of behavior. So if you're talking about Charlie Brown's throwing a temper tantrum that lasts 30 minutes, duration is what you're going to collect. If you're talking about the student needing to be prompted multiple times before they follow through on a request, or because the teacher asks the student to do something and the student doesn't initiate that behavior until 10 minutes later, then you're looking at latency. If you're looking at something like how often is the child getting out of their seat, or how often is the child calling out, then you're looking at frequency. So you would use the one that best applies to the behavior that you're talking about. The next thing, again, name, and then we're looking at intensity. So whether we're talking about something that's mild, moderate, or severe. So you're going to read those explanations and choose the one that's most appropriate. Consequences, what happens immediately following the target behavior. And that doesn't necessarily mean since ISS or a parent called. That's not what we mean here. We're talking about what is happening immediately after the behavior that's serving to reinforce that behavior. Is the child gaining attention? Is the child able to escape work that they didn't want to do? What is happening that's reinforcing that behavior and increasing the likelihood that the child is going to continue to act in that manner? So that's what we're asking for there when it says consequences, not something like detention or time out or calling the parent. We're asking for what happens immediately afterwards. So does the student make inappropriate comments in class and the class laughs? Then he's gaining their attention. If he's throwing a temper tantrum and then getting escorted out of the classroom, he might be escaping the work that he didn't want to do. So then we go to where it says results of the FBA. So under this, you're looking at specifically, of course, the name at the top, but then you're looking specifically at developing that hypothesis regarding the function of behavior. So remember that I said that for our purposes, we're looking only through the singular lens of ABA, applied behavior analysis. So we're looking at, is this child trying to escape something, or is the child trying to gain or access something? So escape and avoid, or access and gain. So the hypothesis regarding the behavior could be during or when Charlie Brown, or during or when Charlie is working independently, the student gets under his desk and growls. The student puts his head down and attempts to go to sleep. 2, avoid doing his work. So you're looking at that's helping you to develop that. What is it that's going on? When is it happening? And why do we believe it's happening? You'll notice here that it says target behavior 1, target behavior 2, target behavior 3. You'll also notice that I only have numbers under target behavior 1. So you only have to include information for one behavior. You can include information for more, but you only have to include information for one behavior. In the real world, you might have a child who has a plethora of opportunities for growth and improvement. However, you can't focus on everything all at the same time. So even if the child has 10 different areas that need improvement, you're going to look for probably the top 3 and focus on those first. But for our purposes, I'm only asking that you give me at least one. And sometimes the child only has one area that we need to focus on, but I'm only asking for one. So like I said, I need to know during or when, and then like I said, during or when the child is asked to read aloud in class, the student starts yelling and screaming and throwing things in an attempt to avoid reading aloud in front of his peers. So in other words, what is it that we think that the child, so when is it happening? What is the behavior? And why do we think it's happening is what you're doing in that section. And that part is key. So, do the results of the FBA indicate a need for behavior? I'm going to tell you the answer to that. Yes, because we're writing an FBA and a behavior plan for our assignment. So we've got to say yes. So we're going to say yes. And because of the fact that it is a fictitious FBA and brand new, we've got to say new behavior plan will be developed. Yes. Easy question, easy on those two. So there's 33 things that are listed here on the FBA. So each of those 33 things are worth 1.5 points. So that's the easiest 3 points right there. Yes and yes. No questions asked. All right. So that's the FBA. From the FBA, then we go to the BIP. Again, the same information here at the top. Don't give me a full name and the name of the school together. Like I said, give me Charlie, give me Brown, give me CB, C Brown, Charlie B, whatever the case might be, but don't give me a full. I don't want to be able to identify the child. So that same information that you had in your FBA goes there at the top of the BIP. Much of this information here is exactly what was in the other page, in the FBA. You're just provided that information there. Define the target behavior of concern in measurable, observable, and objective terms. Again, you're describing exactly what the child is doing that's of a concern, and it can't just be his attitude. Like I said, it needs to be specific, something that can be measured and observed. Under what circumstances is the behavior? So as you'll notice, much of this information comes straight from the other one. How often does the behavior occur? Where does the behavior occur? What's the setting? When does the behavior occur or not occur? So when, where, what type of activity is the behavior more likely to occur? Again, we're still looking at setting there. Remember, setting isn't just math class. It could be when presented with independent work, when called upon to read aloud in front of his peers, when presented with an assessment, when it's time to turn in his homework, when it's time to sit quietly during lecture time. When is the issue going on? Is there a pattern of what type of task the student is involved when the behavior is? In other words, do we notice it's always when he has to read out loud? Do we notice that it's always when he has to do his independent math work? What is it that do we see a pattern that's going on? Function of behavior comes straight from that other page. What is the function of behavior? Here we're putting access or gain, but we also need to fill out there, what is the function of target behavior of concern? So is he looking to access or gain something? And then in that spot next to it, you need to tell me what. Is he looking to access pure attention? Is he looking to access adult attention? Is he looking to avoid a task that he doesn't want? Is he looking to escape internal stimulation? What is it that we're looking for there? And so all of that information goes in this little blank right here next to 23. Again, we've got the name. Those are the easiest points, you guys. Just don't forget to put their name on there. Describe an acceptable behavior to replace the target behavior. So this is the challenge, but this is the important piece. So if Charlie Brown is acting out in class in an attempt to gain attention, then the replacement behavior needs to serve that same function for him. So if he's doing XYZ in order to gain pure attention, we need to give him a more appropriate way to gain the attention that he needs. Remember, it's about what he needs, not just what he wants, but that he needs. Now, if his behavior is in an attempt to avoid something that we can't help him avoid. So like say, for example, the student I had named Sandra that I had for both resource reading and resource math years ago, of course. But Sandra was a doll for me in reading, not a problem. Sandra had great anxiety and struggles when it came to math. So Sandra used to get under her desk and growl at me when it was time for her to do math. Behavior was in an attempt to avoid math. Obviously, I could not help her to avoid math. I could not give her a more appropriate way for her to avoid math. So instead, I had to give her coping strategies instead. So when presented with math that frustrated her, made her anxious, made her nervous, made her upset, made her want to avoid it, instead we were going to do things like an if-then. So then if she would do one problem, then, or, if she would do 3 problems, then she could have a 3-minute break. If she would complete this one, the first half of an assignment, or complete all the even numbers, or complete all the odd numbers, then she could do ABC. Other strategies would be when presented with assignments that you're frustrated with or that you're unsure that you're able to do, you will ask for help. So in other words, teaching the student strategies that will help them to be able to access what they need to do, be able to cope with it, and hopefully scaffold and provide the appropriate levels of support so that they can then be successful. When it's something that we can help them to do better or differently, like seeking attention, then we give them that. But I can't give her an appropriate way to avoid ever having to do math. That's just not possible. So the replacement behavior, the reason why that's important is because oftentimes when behavior is dealt with in school, we give a consequence like ISS or detention, or I'm notifying the parent, or whatever the case might be. And yes, that might bring about a change in behavior, but typically it's a temporary or short-term change in behavior. In order to get a true lasting change in behavior, we have to teach the child a more appropriate way to have their needs met. So just like if you think about like with a toddler, when children don't yet have the verbal skills to be able to tell you what is wrong or what they want or what they need, often they might cry or scream or tantrum. But as we start to teach them other ways to be able to get their needs met, then that's when we start to see a change in that behavior. That's when we start to see that they can do, and they see that they can still get what they need without having to act in that manner. And when they can find a better way to get those needs met, that's when you see a change that lasts, a lasting change in their behavior. So number 25 is huge. That's that replacement behavior. The next section you're able to skip. And then the next one is just simply who will teach the replacement behavior. Who will teach it? What kind of frequency are we using? How often? How many minutes? Where's this going to happen? So it's, of course, your plan. Am I able to check it? No. But as long as it makes sense, it's fine. As long as it makes sense, you're good. Again, the student's name, and then reinforcements. What are you going to do to provide that reinforcement for that student as they're learning this replacement behavior, as you're trying to change that behavior? What do you propose? So there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, as long as it's logical and as long as it is applicable to the situation that you're presenting here. But this section should be your suggestions, and I have that here in parentheses for you right here. So it's all about what would you suggest. And remember that when we're talking about human beings and we're talking about changing behavior, it is very much trial and error. So it's not a matter of, like I said, a right answer, a wrong answer. Now, if you say, I'm going to bop them upside the head, no. If you say, well, if you do your homework, Charlie Brown, I'm going to buy you a beer, no. So that's why I said as long as it's logical and applicable to the situation, then that's fine. Because it's a suggestion. It doesn't have to be, as long as it's something that you could do. So it's not a matter of it's going to be right. There's one right answer. There's only one way to deal with this, because every individual is different and every situation is different. So like I said, as long as it's logical, and as long as it's applicable and it's something that could actually be done in this situation, then you're fine. Next section. So if the student doesn't do as we're hoping that they will do, what correction procedures and or consequences will be used? So before you're talking about what reinforcement you're going to provide as you're trying to change that behavior, but what are you going to do when Charlie Brown still continues to do XYZ? What is that going to be? What feedback are you going to provide to remind the student of what it is that we're trying to do and to use that replacement behavior? So what would be your strategies there? Again, student's name. How will you regularly communicate among your staff about the plan? How are you going to evaluate? How are you going to revise it? How frequently? So the how and the how often. How will the parents be informed? How will the student be informed? So that's where you're giving me your plan for, just like much like in your classroom management plan. And I said, what is your plan of action as far as teaching it, revising it, communicating it, reteaching it as the year goes by? Same thing with the behavior plan. The behavior plan isn't something we write one time and then put it in a notebook and leave it alone. The behavior plan, think about much like as if you were teaching a child to read and you came up with a reading strategy. Obviously, that means that you needed to continue to collect data as you're working that strategy. So that way you know whether or not it's working for the child. Same thing here. So with a behavior plan in the real world, we should be meeting every 4 to 6 weeks to review that plan as an IEP team, to go over our data that we're continuing to collect, to say, yes, it's working, or it's kind of working. I think we need to tweak this. I think we need to tweak that. Or I think, you know what, it's not working at all. Or behavior is getting worse. We need to throw it out. We need to start all over. The only way you know that is through your continued collection of data, through that progress monitoring. And then, so this is your plan for how you're going to communicate with that teacher. Are we going to have a daily checklist? Are we going to have a point sheet? What are we going to use to communicate? Not only with just the parent, but also with the student, and then also with anyone else that's working with that child at the school. Progress monitoring, this is a section you can skip because we're doing this one time. Like I said, it's a learning process. For this section here, this is where you would be including the data that you collected. Like I said, the one time you collect data, normally it would not just be 1 day of data. So provide me that information here. This section here, you're going to skip because obviously, one-time option, you don't have the opportunity to tell me about how you're analyzing the child's progress because you observed him one time. So you're skipping that section as well. The behavior intervention plan summary, it's truly what it says. You're summarizing all the information that you had before. So you're repeating the demographic information at the top. You are repeating the same thing that came from the FBA in that next section where you're telling me the function of behavior, the replacement behavior, the strategies that you're going to implement when the replacement behavior occurs or when the problem behavior occurs. In other words, what are you going to do as far as the reinforcement? They're on number 48. What are you going to do as the consequences or reactive strategies when he's not doing what you need him to do? And what data are you going to continue to collect? So you're summarizing your plan for me right there. Again, it says behaviors 2 and 3 as well, but you only have to do it for one behavior. And then that's it. That is it. The only part here down at the bottom, let me see if I can get that to get a little bit smaller so I can show you. So I can get that just show down here at the bottom. Hold on just a second. There are 50 answers on this one, and they are worth 1 point each. So that's the BIP. So I've talked about the FBA, the BIP. Now let's talk about your presentation. So this is also available for you in the rubrics folder as well as in the FBA folder. Like I said, in a typical situation, the FBA and BIP, so you do your assessment, which is the FBA, and then you draft your proposal for what you have as your plan to intervene, which is why it's called a behavior intervention plan, your plan for how you're going to intervene. Normally that's presented in an IEP meeting. So that way the team comes together with that parent, and depending on the age of the student should be in the meeting as well. And you have that conversation with the student and the parent and the team about this is the information that we collected, this is our assessment, and then this is the plan that we have to go over it, or the plan that we have to address it. So for our class purposes, instead of an IEP team meeting, you're going to present it to me. So this video is not going to be for the rest of the class. It's not going to be posted for the class. You're just going to be presenting it to me. So you're going to create a video, and I'm very, very strict on this part. So I'm going to say it slowly. I'm going to repeat it. 5 to 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes, not 4, not 11. 5 to 10. Why? Because there's 35 of you guys in class, you guys. So just do that math for me, all right? Pause for just a second and do that math. If you were to do a 20-minute video, think about how long that would be for me to be able to check all of those. And you're probably thinking, but that's not practical. It is. In a typical situation, at least in our district, we try to have an IEP meeting within one class period. Our class periods are 45 minutes long. So if we think about the time that it takes to have at the beginning of the meeting, you should introduce everyone at the meeting. You offer the parents their rights and explain to them their rights, their due process rights. You explain the purpose of the meeting, and then you would go over the assessment. You would go over the plan. You would get input from the parent. You would get input from the student. You get input from the gen ed teacher. And then all of that needs to happen within, hopefully, that time frame. So the part that you're presenting, because there's no other conversation going on, it's just your one-sided conversation, that should be able to be done in 10 minutes. That's the plan. All right. So you're not going to necessarily read word for word for word for word. It's much like when you give a presentation, it's visible for me here on the screen. That's why it's going to be visible. And so as you're presenting it, much like I did, you're going to scroll through it and present it. All right. So 5 to 10 minutes. I cannot fathom that it can be done in less than 5. I can't fathom that there's any way that you would be able to present the FBA and the BIP in less than 5 minutes. So that's why I said 5 is the minimum, but 10 needs to be the maximum. Like I said, because you need to be very concise, to the point, include all the important information. And like I said, just present to me, show me your FBA and your BIP as you're talking about it. Upload the link to your video. As we have learned this semester, or depending on when you're watching this, there are sometimes issues with certain types of video uploads. What I have learned to do, because of my own trial and error and our struggles with getting, even the program that I've used for years and years and years has now started having issues. Please, please, please send your video to a friend and have them see if they can open it before you upload it for me. Email it to your spouse or your significant other or to your ex-spouse, whoever you want to email it to, and ask them, can they open it? They don't have to watch the whole thing. Just ask them, can they open it? Make sure that your picture is visible as your presentation is as you're displaying your FBA and BIP. If you're having issues with the program that you're using, I have started now making my video still in the program that I've been using because that's what I'm comfortable with. And then I just simply upload that to YouTube. And I don't believe that anyone's having any issues being able to open the YouTube videos. So double check, please, before you submit it for me to make sure that it is accessible. If you don't want to send it to somebody else, email it to your email and then open it on another browser or on another computer to make sure that your link works. All right. So upload your link to your video, and that's how I'm going to be watching your video presentation. Remember, I need to be able to see you just as you can see me. I need to be able to see you. I need to be able to see your FBA as you present it, and then the BIP. And you're probably wondering, okay, so how is my grade calculated for this part? So with the FBA and BIP, I showed you each one was numbered and highlighted. And I told you that each one on the FBA was worth 1.5 points, a point and a half. And on the BIP, each one of those was worth 1 point. So both of those are worth 50 points each. Your video is also worth 50 points. So this assignment as a whole is worth 150 points. It is your signature assessment for the course. So your introduction, you can earn up to 10 points. I need you to address the key factors, including but not limited to the child's preferred learning style, the important individuals in the student's life, areas where they're successful, and situations where behaviors are worse. And all of that information that you would have, that you would give me, where you're introducing the child to us, where you're giving us a summary about that child, helping us to know who the child is. The strategies, correctly identify the function or functions of behavior, provide suggestions. So the section where I ask you, what would you do about it? Suggestions of strategies to help lessen the undesirable behaviors. Discuss the plan for how you would communicate the behavior plan and the student's progress with the other staff members, the student and the guardian. And that's up to 10 points as well. Your data from when you went and observe the student. How will you collect data? Address how you will know if the plan is working. What are you looking for in the data? Your delivery. So when you're presenting to me, make sure that you're maintaining attention, the audience's attention, speak professionally and clearly, and concisely communicate the information in a logical order. So don't jump all over the place. And again, be concise, clear, and communicate the information so that someone else would understand it. So don't use a lot of jargon. Even though I may know it, you're presenting it as if you're presenting it to the parent. Again, the presentation, I need to be able to see you. Speaker must be visible throughout the presentation and also be able to see the completed FBA and BIP as you're discussing. Not a new PowerPoint, just simply display that FBA and that BIP. Many of you are going to probably ask that I do one of those, the word just left me, where I submit for you guys, where you fill out the a favorable disposition. Thank you. You're gonna want me to submit a disposition for you. Some of the things that are on there, by you presenting for me a video presentation, that gives me a better way to say, yes, you can communicate clearly in a verbal manner. Yes, you can do this, and yes, you can do that. Where we are learning online, and when our chat sessions are mostly just me doing the talking, I don't have a frame of reference other than your video presentation. So please make sure that you are presenting it in a professional manner, and that you are, again, concise, clearly communicating, and that you're explicit in your information. If you have any questions that I did not answer, again, in our major assignments, this information was there for you. And then in your rubrics, and in the FBA folder, you will find the forms that you use. You will find the highlighted and numbered FBA form, the highlighted and numbered BIP form, and the video rubric for the rubric for your video presentation, as well as the resources for creating a video if you need those. And then there will be a link to this video. Now that I've hopefully got it fixed. So there will be a link to this video. If by any chance this video and those rubrics and those templates do not answer your question, don't hesitate to reach out, and I will do my best to help you with it. Look forward to seeing you in class. Take care. God bless. See you guys soon. Good night, or good morning, or good afternoon. See you guys soon. Bye.